Hey there, nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we're back with another episode of Hobby Side. This series deals with the hobby aspect of the miniatures wargaming hobby, and on today's episode, we are taking a look at the latest release from the Old World Almanack from Warhammer Community webpage. As you can see, this one's actually released on the 18th of December, and we're going to take a look real quick at exactly what it says. And the reason why I'm doing this video a little bit on a Tuesday is because I just saw this dropped yesterday on Monday, and I was actually quite happy to see what it was about because it talks about army compositions for the most part. So as you can see here, it says Old World Almanack mustering the Grand Army of Bretonnia, and as you can see, they've been kind of dropping down different hints about what Warhammer the Old World would look like in the future with its rules. And what I wanted to see here was basically army composition, because that's going to be really important to me just because I am a massive Warhammer collection and want to see exactly what it looks like. So it looks like it says an army composition list is broken down into a number of categories. So it looks like we have the typical 8th edition lineup here. We have characters, core, special, and rare, which was basically the composition that we had from the old 8th edition, which is kind of nice. But at the same time as well, we have this new one. It says, in addition, many army composition lists will now include one or both of the following categories. Mercenaries. Some armies may include specific units drawn from another army list as mercenaries. And allies. Most armies can include an ally contingent drawn from another army list. Now this part is really cool. Now the reason why I like this a lot is because this mercenaries / allies game mechanic was from back in the original days of Warhammer Fantasy. I would say around the 4th or 5th edition, or basically I was when I first got started as a kid into Warhammer. And the reason why I really appreciate the mercenaries / allies contingent to this is because if you are a starting brand new player to Warhammer and you're slowly building up a collection of miniatures, these mercenaries and allies could really help you out. Because let's pretend you want to play at 2,000 points. Let's say you're playing Bretonnians, because we're looking at Bretonnians here, for example, but you don't have enough miniatures to make a 2,000 point Bretonnian army. But you do, let's say, have some miniatures from either their mercenary list or their allies list. You can take those and bulk up your army to make it to a full 2,000 points, which is a really nice money-saving way for a lot of players to do things. Because like when I was a younger kid, I had a bunch of different miniatures from different armies, but I couldn't really field a full 2,000 point army. But because the ally game mechanic was still available during that time period, I could use other miniatures from my collection to bulk out my army. So I think that it's really nice that they've actually included this as well, which is really cool in that case. Now it says here that every faction will have a grand army upon release, a balanced list of options for which you can pick a wide variety of units chosen from 4 categories shown above. There's usually one page of stipulations, but the full range of units from each faction is available for selection. Take, for example, the Grand Army of Bretonnia. So it's kind of neat here. They show you exactly what the Grand Army of Bretonnia would look like, but what I really like is they show you the percentages of what your points will look like. So let's go and talk about this. So your characters, it says up to 50% of your army's point value may be spent on characters, which is great because that's kind of like from the 4th edition of Warhammer Fantasy, also the last part of the End Times. The reason why I like this is because a lot of people might not like the whole 50% character allowance thing, but the reason why I like it is because if you don't have enough miniatures to build a full army, you can put a lot of points in your characters to kind of bulk up your points. It's kind of like a nice money-saving option for a lot of players, especially brand new players for the most part. It looks like you can take 0 to 1 Duke, 0 to 1 Baron, or Prophetess per 1,000 points. So it looks like that's how they're going to balance that out. Nothing wrong with that. As well as Paladins, Damsels, as well as Sergeant at Arms. So it looks like they're bringing back the old champion character that used to be back in the day. For people who were veteran players of Warhammer Fantasy, they might remember this, but during the 4th and 5th edition of Warhammer Fantasy, champions, which you usually pay in your units back in 8th edition, they actually used to be individual characters. They can give them actual magical items and stuff like that they could actually use. So it looks like they're bringing that back, which is really cool if they're doing that, because then you could actually have beefed up champions to fight for you. It kind of looks like a little bit back to the days of Hero Hammer from the 4th and 5th editions. Now it says here for core, at least 25% of your army's points value must be spent on at least 1 unit of Knights of the Realm, on foot or mounted. Makes sense, your Bretonnian army. At least 1 unit of men at arms or peasant bowmen. Makes sense, you are an army. Or 0 to 1 units of Knights Errant per unit of Knights of the Realm on foot or mounted Knights of the Realm taken. So that's kind of neat. So it looks like your 25 point value is going to be there, which is kind of nice. So it looks like they're keeping that, they're maintaining that. Now it says for special, up to 50% of your army's point values may be spent on, and it gives you a list of different special units you can take: Squires, Questing Knights, Pegasus Knights, Mounted Yeomen, 0 to 2 units of battle programs per 1,000 points. That makes sense. Same thing with your rare. It says up to 25% of your army's value may be spent on rare items, which are your Grail Knights, or 0 to 1 field trebuchet per 1,000 points. So that's kind of interesting. I wonder if they're going to do that with the war machines, which could be kind of problematic for me a little bit, just because a lot of the armies in my collection do have war machines. But if that's the case, I'll just change it up. It's not a big deal. Now, this is the part that's really nice here. It says mercenaries. Up to 20% of your army's point value may be spent on mercenaries, which is going to be really nice to actually have, which means like in a 2,000 point list, 400 points could be made up of mercenaries that you could have for whatever list you might have. So let's say, for example, you are playing Bretonnians, and let's say, I would imagine Ogre Kingdoms would be a mercenary unit here. You could actually spend some points on that, which could be kind of nice. And then there's allies one, which I like this. Up to 25% of your army's point value may be spent on a single ally contingent drawn from the following: any Kingdom of Bretonnian Army of Infamy composition list, which I'm not sure what that is about. Might be a new game mechanic coming in later on. It says in one of the following Grand Army composition lists: Dwarven Mountain Holds, Empire of Man, High Elf Realms, and Wood Elf Realms. So that is really cool. So like I said before, let's say, for example, you have a, let's say, 1,500 point army, Bretonnians. Maybe that's what the starter box set comes with. It's around 1,000, maybe 500 points if you beef up your characters, for example. But you want to play at 25, you want to play at 2,000 points. But let's say you have some old Empire of Man or High Elf miniatures in your collection as well. You can make up a quarter of your army to make up of those allies, which would be really cool. And I think that's a really nice game mechanic. And the reason why I think that is the case is because you can, like I said before, save a lot of money for yourself, beef up your army with whatever units you might have or miniatures you might have, which is actually quite nice there. And it says here that there's a lot here to unpack. Firstly, you can't overload your army with powerful wizards and mighty heroes. That makes sense. Otherwise, as long as 25% of your roster is spent on units such as core, it includes one unit of Knights of the Realm, another peasant levies. Army selection is very flexible. As you expect, Grail Knights and Field Trebuchet aren't a common sight, but 38 points per model, 7 for champion, musician, and standard. You can keep around about 2 units of 6 Grail Knights into a 2,000 point army, which is kind of neat. All right, pretty cool there. And this is perfect for any duke who prefers to keep every single one of his eggs right here in one decorative basket, which would be kind of cool. So this is the thing I was talking about earlier when it talks about Lords of Bretonnia. So we have Duke, Barons, and Paladins. So that looks like that's pretty interesting there with the different hero types that we have. Looks like they have all the different upgrades that you can usually get for your guys, which looks really cool. Looks very familiar to the old 8th edition of Warhammer Fantasy, which is kind of nice. I really like that. I really like the way they do this with... Here we go. It says, Grownards may remember multiple ranks of heroes from previous editions of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and those delineations are still present. Correct. A duke and a mighty warrior indeed. No time for feasting, issuing edicts, or sprawling decorously across your throne these days. Every Bretonnian general is tremendously skilled arms and as strong as a troll. So that is kind of neat how they did that. I think it's kind of cool they're bringing back the old different types of heroes you could take, as well as characters you could take for your army. Kind of like the old Hero Hammer days. Which is great. I like that because if you want to, you can spend points on characters or to help beef up your army because maybe you don't have as many miniatures. But that's kind of nice. I really like that. I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but I actually make a video about what caused the Old World to Warhammer Fantasy to fail in the end, and that was one of the things I was talking about because back in the day you could spend points on characters to actually beef up your armies. And then, of course, they talk about they have different things with weapons lists, which is kind of great. And it says, we'll go over velocity virtues for now. Suffice to say, there are 2 pages of them, and they're great. But wouldn't you like to know about mounts? Well, here it goes. So this is the part I think is actually kind of nice. So, monsters. So it looks like it's got movement 7, 5 weapon skill, 5 strength, and it says +1 to toughness, +3 to wounds, 5 initiative, 4 attacks. So it looks like what they're doing now is it looks like they're combining traits now, it looks like, for your monsters, which to me was always a cool thing. One of my biggest gripes that I hated about 8th edition was that multiple wound characters riding multiple wound mounts, how you had to choose the highest amount of wounds. For example, let's pretend that you had a lord, let's say the Ogre Kingdoms, right? For example, you had an Ogre, what they call Morfang Cavalry. Ogre Mornfang usually has 3 wounds on an Ogre, right? And he rides a Mornfang, which also has 3 wounds. And how that would work in 8th edition is that you only had 3 wounds total, which never made sense to me because it's like, wait a minute, so what ended up happening? Did the Mornfang lose 3 of its wounds because now it's carrying an Ogre, or did the Ogre lose its 3 wounds because it's riding on a Mornfang? What I would do with my gaming group as a house rule, we would combine the profile, make it 6, which is amazing. We would take the highest toughness for the mount to wound against because that makes a lot of sense in my opinion. And a lot of people would say, well, that's broken, that's OP, but don't forget, you're also paying points to include this in your army, so you should get something something for those points, and that looks like it's really cool as well. So it looks like you're combining your toughness and you're combining your wounds with your mounts, which is really awesome as well. It looks like we have these countercharge, fly 9, large target, stop attack, swift stride, terror. Looks like we're seeing those old classic special rules, which is really nice as well. I think that's really, really cool how they're doing this. And as you can see right here as well, they're also giving you some stats for the regular infantry guys. These are stats we're quite familiar with seeing from back in the day. Looks like you can also include a Grail Monk in your unit now, which is kind of interesting. It looks like they got some really cool upgrades they can add. Looks like it says the Grail Monk may be equipped with the Blessed Triptych, which means you might have some new looking kind of infantry items available for your armies, which is kind of cool. I really dig that as well. That is really, really cool how they're doing so. Really cool how they're including some new things to this as well. So it also says Army of Infamy. So the Grand Army is not the only way to select a force. However, each faction will gradually gain access to Armies of Infamy, which provide often wildly different ways to muster force. As a Bretonnian Lord, you might wish to enter exile, especially if it means you can take forbidden border princes bombards into battle, while those who really just enjoy knights and more knights may prefer an infantry crusade. There's no Old World Almanack next Monday. It's Christmas Day after all, but check for the 26th for something of an off-white Christmas. Yes, including those factions getting a PDF list. That is really, really cool. I've been really loving the things I've been seeing with strategy, movement, shooting, combat, and morale, psychology, magic, and universal special rules. I've been loving the things I've been seeing from these other Almanacs releases, and this army selection is actually has me really excited for this new edition of Warhammer Fantasy. It looks like, and the reason why that is the case is because it's going back to like a good combination of 8th edition, that where Warhammer Fantasy ended, as well as like the 4th and 5th edition as well. It's kind of like they took the balance between the Hero Hammer days of Warhammer Fantasy as well as 8th edition. They're kind of combining them together, which is really cool as well. I really dig that they're doing that, especially with these mercenaries allies. Now, the reason why I really appreciate it is that for new players, that's the reason why I really appreciate that. You got a lot of young people coming out there now trying to get into the game now, and they may not have enough miniatures to make a full-blown 2,000 point army, but with these mercenaries and allies adjustments, they can actually bulk up their force to make that point allowance. I also love the fact that they also did the 50% characters as well, because in case you don't have enough money, you could actually just beef up your characters, throw some mercenaries and allies, and you have a 2,000 point army that you could field in the battle, which means you'll also see a wild variety of different armies that'll be out there as well, which would be really, really cool. And if they do this for all the other factions for Warhammer Fantasy, this would be really awesome, and I can't wait to see exactly what they come up with these different game mechanics and army compositions. It looks really, really awesome, and this looks very promising as well, and so that is awesome. I can't say enough cool things about it so far, so that is really great. Okay, guys, so that's going to do this one. Just a quick little impromptu video, just taking a look at the Old World Almanac so far. What are your guys' thoughts? How do you feel about some of the information that's coming down the pike from Warhammer the Old World? Do you like some of these things? Do you not? Let us know in the comment section down below. So that's good for this, guys. I will catch you guys next one. Peace out and stay classy.